Number, the invasion fleet. Numbered 9,900. Strong. Earth made sure. Almost none escaped. Admiral Kethvar stood on the command bridge of the massive dreadnought Times, Sovereign's Wrath *, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger on the main display. Behind him stretched the greatest armada the Galactic Confederation had ever assembled. 9,900 warships of every class imaginable. From nimble destroyers to planet-cracking dreadnoughts. All bearing down on this single, insignificant world. The humans had been troublesome for decades. Their aggressive expansion, their refusal to bow to superior civilizations, their annoying habit of turning every defeat into a Pyrrhic victory for their enemies. The Confederation had tried diplomacy, economic sanctions, even limited military action. Nothing worked. The humans just kept growing stronger, more defiant, more dangerous. So the Council of Species had made the decision. Earth would burn. Admiral, his tactical officer, a sleek Veltarian with silver scales, approached with a datapad. Final fleet composition confirmed. We have 350 dreadnoughts, 800 battleships, 1,500 cruisers, 2,000 destroyers, and the rest are support vessels. Total crew complement is approximately 47 million beings. Kethvar nodded, his forearms clasped behind his back. His species, the mighty Zorthok, had conquered 17 star systems before joining the Confederation. He had personally overseen the subjugation of 6 worlds. But this was different. This was personal. The humans had humiliated his nephew at the Battle of Proxima Station. Young Veltar had commanded a respectable force of 200 ships, facing what intelligence said was a small human defensive fleet. Instead, the humans had somehow turned the very asteroids of the system into weapons, launching them with such precision and force that half the Confederation fleet was destroyed before they could even return fire. Veltar had barely escaped with his life and 37 ships. That was when the Council decided enough was enough. "Sir, receiving transmissions from the human homeworld," the communications officer announced. They're requesting to speak with our commanding officer." Kethvar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. "Put them through. Let's hear what these primitives have to say when faced with extinction." The main screen flickered, and a human face appeared. It was an older male, with graying hair and tired eyes, wearing what appeared to be a simple, blue uniform with minimal decoration. Behind him, others moved about what looked like a basic command center, far less impressive than the cathedral-like bridge of the Times Sovereign's Wrath *. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force," the human said, her voice steady despite the overwhelming odds she faced. "I'm requesting a parley before any hostilities begin. I am Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Confederation Fleet," he replied, allowing a hint of amusement to color his translated words. "You wish to surrender? Very wise of you. The Council might be merciful if you submit immediately." The human's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid surrender isn't on the table, Admiral. I'm offering you one chance to turn your fleet around and leave our system peacefully." The bridge of the Times Sovereign's Wrath Times fell silent. Several officers made the Zorthak equivalent of shocked gasps. Even the normally unflappable Veltarians seemed stunned. Kethvar leaned forward in his command throne. You're threatening us? With what? Our intelligence indicates you have perhaps 200 ships in your entire defensive fleet. We have nearly 10,000. Numbers aren't everything, Admiral," Chen replied calmly. "We've learned a lot since Proxima Station. Your nephew was kind enough to provide us with excellent data on Confederation ship capabilities and tactics. We've had 3 years to prepare for this moment." 1. "Prepare?" Kethvar's voice rose. "Prepare what? More asteroid tricks? Clever tactics? Human. I have enough firepower here to crack your planet's crust and boil away your oceans. Your species will be extinct within the day. And in ocean, for the first time, Admiral Chen smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Admiral, let me ask you something. In all your intelligence reports about humanity, did anyone ever mention what we do to our own planet when we get really angry at each other? Why? 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 Kethvar frowned. What relevance does your primitive tribal warfare have on modern space combat? Quote, quite a lot, actually. Chen's smile widened. You see, Admiral, we humans have a saying. If you want peace, prepare for war. We've been preparing for war our entire existence. We've gotten very, very good at it. Your bravado is admirable but pointless, Kethvar declared. We will begin our attack in 1 hour. Use that time to make peace with whatever gods your species worships. The transmission ended, and the bridge crew began the methodical process of preparing for orbital bombardment. Weapons systems came online, targeting computers, calculated optimal firing solutions, and shield generators hummed to full power. But something nagged at Admiral Kethvar. The human woman's confidence had seemed genuine, not the desperate bluster of someone facing inevitable doom. What could they possibly have that would make them so certain? Sir, the sensor officer called out, his voice puzzled. I'm detecting some unusual readings from the outer system. Define unusual, Kethvar ordered. Multiple gravity anomalies, sir. They appear to be moving. The Admiral's blood went cold. Moving how? Show me. The tactical display shifted to show the entire solar system. Scattered throughout were dozens of red dots, each one moving with purpose toward the inner system. As he watched, more appeared, seemingly materializing from empty space. What are those? He demanded. Unknown, sir. They're too far out for detailed scans, but they're large. Very large. And they're accelerating toward us. Admiral Chen's voice echoed in his memory. We've been preparing for war our entire existence. Kethvar straightened in his command throne. Whatever the humans had planned, it didn't matter. They still had only a few hundred ships at most, and he had nearly 10,000. The laws of physics couldn't be overcome by clever tactics or surprise weapons. All ships, battle stations, he commanded. Prepare for immediate engagement. But as the Confederation fleet moved into attack formation, more red dots appeared on the sensors. Then more, and more. The sensor officer's voice cracked slightly as he made his report. Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the asteroid belt. It's like the entire belt is coming alive. On the main screen, Earth continued to turn peacefully, its blue oceans and white clouds giving no hint of the industrial might that had been secretly building throughout the solar system for decades. Hidden in asteroid caves, concealed behind planetary shadows, buried deep in the ice of the outer moons, humanity had been busy. They had learned from Proxima Station 2. They had learned that in space, every piece of rock could be a weapon, every satellite a fortress, every seemingly empty region of space a potential ambush point. But more than that, they had learned something about themselves. Humanity didn't just fight wars, they engineered total victory. The gravity anomalies were resolving now, close enough for better scans. Each one was massive, easily the size of a battleship but with energy signatures unlike anything in the Confederation databases. They moved with precision, taking up positions around the fleet, with the coordinated grace of a pack of predators surrounding their prey. Admiral, the communications officer said quietly, we're receiving another transmission from Earth. Admiral Chen's face appeared again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood dozens of other humans in various uniforms, all of them wearing the same, confident, almost predatory expression. Admiral Kethvar, she said, I hope you've used the last hour to say your prayers. You see, we humans have another saying. Don't start a fight. You can't finish. The Confederation started this fight at Proxima Station. Today, we finish it. The gravity anomalies suddenly blazed with light as massive engines fired in perfect synchronization. What had appeared to be mysterious contacts were revealed as the most audacious weapons ever conceived by any species in the galaxy. Humanity had taken asteroids, some the size of small moons, and turned them into kinetic bombardment platforms. Dozens of them, accelerated to incredible speeds, and guided by AI systems that could calculate trajectories with inhuman precision. Each one carried enough kinetic energy to shatter a dreadnought with a single impact. But that wasn't all. As the asteroid weapons began their attack runs, space around the Confederation fleet suddenly erupted with activity. Hidden missile platforms, concealed in what had appeared to be space debris, opened fire simultaneously. Thousands of missiles, each one smaller and faster than traditional torpedoes, swarmed toward the alien fleet like angry hornets. Impossible, Kethvar breathed. How many weapons platforms did they build? The answer came not from his sensors, but from Admiral Chen's transmission. Every piece of space junk, larger than a basketball in this entire system, has been weaponized, Admiral. Every dead satellite, every discarded rocket stage, every chunk of debris from our early space exploration. We've had 70 years to prepare for this day, and we've used every single one of them. The first impacts began. A Confederation destroyer, caught between two converging asteroid weapons, simply ceased to exist as several billion tons of rock, moving at relativistic speeds, tore through its hull. The smaller missile swarms reached their targets next, overwhelming point defense systems through sheer numbers and attacking from every conceivable angle. But Admiral Kethvar was a veteran commander, and the Confederation fleet was not without its own formidable capabilities. All ships, Defensive Formation Gamma. Concentrate fire on the largest threats. Launch fighters. The space around Earth became a hellish light show as energy weapons lanced between the combatants. Confederation ships, their shields blazing under the assault, began to fight back with the disciplined fury that had conquered half the galaxy. Fighter squadrons launched from carrier ships, racing to engage the missile swarms before they could do more damage. For a moment, it seemed like the superior training and technology of the Confederation might prevail despite the surprise attack. Their ships were larger, their weapons more powerful, their shields stronger. They began to destroy the asteroid weapons one by one, their combined firepower overwhelming even those massive kinetic bombardment platforms. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold with the calm attention of someone reading a familiar book. She had run this simulation thousands of times. Every variable had been calculated. Every contingency planned for. Phase 2, she said quietly. Throughout the inner solar system, concealed installations suddenly came online. What the Confederation had dismissed as industrial platforms and mining stations revealed their true nature as massive railguns and particle beam weapons. Mars itself had been turned into a fortress world, its surface bristling with defensive installations that could reach across millions of kilometers. But the true surprise was Earth's moon. The ancient, cratered surface split open along hidden seams, revealing the most ambitious construction project in human history. The entire moon had been hollowed out and converted into a single, massive weapons platform. Its surface was studded with thousands of gun ports, each one housing weapons that dwarfed anything ever mounted on a spaceship. Luna opened fire. The energy release was so intense that it temporarily blinded sensors throughout the system. When the glare faded, 17 Confederation dreadnoughts had been reduced to expanding clouds of plasma and debris. Admiral Kethvar stared at the tactical display in horror as his mighty fleet began to die around him. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. The humans hadn't just prepared defenses. They had turned their entire solar system into a trap, designed to destroy any force foolish enough to attack their homeworld. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "We're losing ships faster than we can count them. The enemy weapons are coordinating their attacks. It's like they're all controlled by a single mind." They were. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in bunkers built to survive the destruction of continents, Quantum computers processed battle data at speeds that made real-time tactical adjustment possible. Every weapon in the system shared targeting data, adjusted for the movements of allies and enemies alike, and struck with the coordinated precision of a single organism. Humanity had learned the ultimate lesson of warfare. Overwhelming force applied with perfect coordination could defeat any enemy, regardless of technological superiority. The battle raged for 6 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Admiral Kethvar watched his magnificent armada die ship by ship, torn apart by weapons that seemed to materialize from empty space and disappear just as quickly. The humans had built their defenses with the same paranoid thoroughness they brought to everything else, and they had built them to win. When the Time's Sovereign's Wrath Times finally took a fatal hit, its shields overwhelmed by a coordinated strike from 12 different directions, Admiral Kethvar found himself floating in an escape pod, watching the death throes of his flagship. Around him, space was filled with similar pods and the wreckage of what had once been the greatest fleet in galactic history. Of nearly 10,000 ships, less than 50 would make it back to Confederation space to tell the tale. As his pod's emergency beacon activated, Admiral Kethvar realized that Admiral Chen had been right about one thing. The humans had indeed learned a lot since Proxima Station. They had learned how to win wars before they began. Number: the invasion fleet. Numbered: 9,900. Strong. Earth made sure. Almost. None. Escaped. Captain Veltar of the Confederation Cruiser Times, Silent Victory Times, was one of the 43 ship commanders who survived the massacre at Earth. His ship limped through hyperspace toward Confederation Central Command, its hull scarred by impacts from human weapons that defied every principle of space combat he had ever learned. The journey back took 2 weeks, and every day brought new reports from the other survivors. Their stories painted a picture so unbelievable that Veltar wondered if they were all suffering from some form of shared psychological breakdown. Weapons that appeared from nowhere, asteroids that moved like guided missiles, an entire moon converted into a fortress. It sounded like the fevered imagination of a war story novelist. Not a battlefield report, but the evidence was undeniable. The greatest military force in galactic history had been obliterated by what every intelligence report had described as a minor, primitive species with limited space capabilities. The survivors were met at Zerion Prime by a full investigation committee, headed by Chancellor Mordak herself. The 8-foot-tall insectoid leader of the Confederation had ruled for over 2 centuries, and her compound eyes had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations. Nothing in her experience had prepared her for what she heard in the debriefing rooms. "Explain to me again," she said to Captain Veltar, her translated voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "how an entire asteroid belt became weaponized." Veltar, still wearing the bandages from his injuries, consulted his battered datapad. "The humans didn't just mine the asteroids, Chancellor. They moved them. Our analysts believe they've been using gravity tractors and fusion drives for decades to position chunks of rock throughout the system. When we arrived, they simply activated guidance systems and turned them into kinetic bombardment weapons. The energy requirements for such an undertaking would be enormous," protested Admiral Thexani, the Confederation's chief military strategist. "Our economic models indicate that humanity's industrial capacity couldn't possibly support such a project." "With respect, sir," Captain Veltar replied, "our economic models also said they couldn't have built the defenses that destroyed Admiral Kethvar's fleet. I think we need to reconsider our assumptions about human capabilities." Chancellor Mordak gestured for silence. "What of their actual fleet? What happened to the ships our intelligence said they possessed?" Another survivor, Commander Zek Toll of the Destroyer Times, Righteous Fury *, stepped forward. "They never engaged us directly, Chancellor. We expected to face their ships in traditional combat, but instead they let their fixed defenses do most of the work. It was like fighting a fortress instead of a fleet." "That makes no tactical sense," Admiral Thexani objected. "Ships provide flexibility, the ability to pursue fleeing enemies and exploit tactical advantages. Why would they rely solely on static defenses?" The question was answered 3 days later. when the first reports arrived from Confederation border worlds. The garrison commander at Kelvin Station was the first to report the impossible. Human warships had somehow appeared in the outer system, and were demanding the immediate evacuation of all Confederation personnel. When he refused, the humans demonstrated their seriousness by precisely disabling his station's weapons and life support systems without causing a single casualty. Within hours, similar reports flooded in from 17 other border systems. Human fleets had appeared simultaneously across thousands of light-years of space, all delivering the same message. Confederation forces had 48 hours to abandon their positions and withdraw to the inner systems. The reports were baffling for more than just their scope. According to every known law of physics, it was impossible for a single fleet to be in multiple locations simultaneously. The humans would need hundreds of ships to accomplish such a coordinated offensive, and intelligence insisted they only possessed a few dozen vessels. Chancellor Mordak convened an emergency session of the High Council. Representatives from all 14 major Confederation species gathered in the crystal halls of Zirion Prime to address what was rapidly becoming the greatest military crisis in their history. "How is this possible?" demanded Ambassador Kryloth of the Hegemony. His crystalline form shimmered with agitation. "Our intelligence services have been monitoring human space for decades. Where did these ships come from?" Quote, "The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Velsina, a Zorthak scientist who specialized in human technology, had been studying the wreckage recovered from the Earth battle. Her analysis revealed something that sent shockwaves through the assembled leaders. The humans haven't been building conventional starships," she explained, her forearms gesturing at the holographic displays showing ship fragments. "They've been developing something entirely new. These vessels appear to use a form of modular construction that allows them to be rapidly assembled and disassembled." "Meaning what, exactly?" "Meaning they can build a ship in one system, break it down into component parts, ship those parts through conventional cargo vessels to another system, and reassemble it there. They've essentially solved the logistics problem that limits rapid fleet deployment across galactic distances." The implications were staggering. Traditional military doctrine assumed that ships had to travel between systems under their own power, limiting the speed at which forces could be repositioned. If humans could simply disassemble their ships and ship the parts as cargo, they could appear anywhere in the galaxy with minimal warning. But even this revelation didn't explain the true scope of what was happening. Over the following days, human demands for Confederation withdrawal expanded to include 30 more systems, then 50, then 100. Admiral Thexani, studying the tactical displays in his command center, finally grasped the magnitude of the situation. "They're not using hundreds of ships," he announced to his staff. "They're using dozens of ships, hundreds of times." His analysis was correct. Humanity had indeed revolutionized space warfare, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of building massive fleets, they had focused on creating the most advanced logistics system in galactic history. Their ships could be broken down and rebuilt so quickly that the same vessel could appear in multiple systems within days of each other. The humans were fighting a war of movement on a scale that made traditional military thinking obsolete. They would appear in a system, deliver their demands, and disappear before any response force could arrive. By the time Confederation reinforcements reached the area, the human ships were already being reassembled hundreds of light-years away. Chancellor Mordak realized that the Confederation faced an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. This wasn't a traditional military force that could be defeated through superior firepower or tactical brilliance. This was something new, something that required an entirely different approach. She authorized Operation Starfall, the largest military mobilization in Confederation history. Every available ship from every member species was recalled from patrol duties and garrison assignments. Within 2 weeks, over 15,000 vessels had assembled at Zirion Prime, ready to launch a coordinated strike against human space. The plan was simple. Overwhelming force applied simultaneously across multiple target systems. The humans might be able to outmaneuver smaller forces, but even their advanced logistics couldn't compete with the combined might of the entire Confederation fleet attacking at once. Admiral Thexani, now commanding the assembled armada from the Super Dreadnought times Unity's Hammer Asterisk, felt confident as his forces prepared for the jump to human space. Intelligence indicated that humanity's core systems were only lightly defended now that their mobile forces were scattered across the galaxy. A decisive strike at Earth and the other major human worlds would end this war quickly. The fleet jumped into the Sol system, expecting to find minimal resistance. Instead, they found themselves facing something that shouldn't have existed. Earth was gone. Not destroyed, not evacuated. Gone. In its place was a massive space station the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that made the previous lunar defenses look primitive by comparison. The sun itself seemed different, surrounded by a network of structures that defied immediate identification. "Report," Admiral Thexani demanded, his voice tight with confusion. "Sir," his science officer replied, his instruments apparently malfunctioning. "I'm reading energy output from the sun that's impossible. It's as if something is artificially enhancing its fusion processes." The truth was even more audacious than anything the Admiral could have imagined. Humanity hadn't just been building ships and weapons. They had been rebuilding their entire star system. Earth had been converted into raw materials for the construction of artificial habitats with vastly greater living space. The sun had been partially enclosed in a network of collectors that provided energy on a scale that dwarfed anything achieved by any known civilization. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. As the Confederation fleet moved into attack formation, space around them suddenly filled with human vessels. Not dozens or hundreds, but thousands. Ships that emerged from concealment behind every planetary body, uncloaked from stealth systems more advanced than anything in Confederation databases, and materialized from what could only be some form of faster-than-light transportation technology. Admiral Thexani stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "Where did they all come from?" Our intelligence said. "Our intelligence was wrong, sir," his tactical officer replied quietly. "We've been watching their star system for decades, but we were only seeing what they wanted us to see. The human fleet that surrounded them was unlike anything in galactic military history. The ships were larger than Confederation dreadnoughts, but moved with the agility of fighters. Their weapons fired at rates that should have overloaded any known power system. Their shields absorbed energy levels that should have overwhelmed their generators. And they all bore the same message, broadcast simultaneously across all frequencies. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to the laws of war. Continue hostile actions, and you will share the fate of Admiral Kethvar's fleet." Admiral Thexani found himself facing the same impossible choice that had confronted his predecessor. He commanded the largest military force ever assembled by the Confederation. But he was looking at a human fleet that seemed to violate every known limit of technology and physics. The difference was that Admiral Thexani was a student of military history. He had studied the reports from the Earth battle, analyzed every detail of the human tactics, and reached a conclusion that terrified him. Humanity hadn't been showing off their full capabilities during that first engagement. They had been holding back. The weapons that had destroyed Admiral Kethvar's fleet had been impressive, but they were nothing compared to what now surrounded his forces. The humans had used the time since the first battle to upgrade their technology, expand their capabilities, and prepare for exactly this scenario. Looking at his tactical display, Admiral Thexani realized that the Confederation had made a fundamental error in their understanding of human nature. They had assumed that destroying one fleet would demonstrate human limitations and discourage further resistance. Instead, it had taught humanity exactly what they needed to prepare for. Humans didn't just learn from their victories. They learned from their enemies' capabilities and made sure they could defeat anything similar in the future. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a direct transmission. It's from Admiral Chen." The main screen activated to show the same human commander who had overseen the destruction of Admiral Kethvar's forces, but she looked different now, older and harder, with the bearing of someone who had spent the intervening months preparing for total war. "Admiral Thexani," she said. I'm offering you the same choice I offered your predecessor. You can surrender your fleet and withdraw from human space, or you can discover just how much we've learned since our last encounter. The Admiral looked around his bridge, seeing the fear in the eyes of his crew. Outside, human ships moved in formations that suggested coordination beyond anything achieved by organic crews. The space around the former Earth teemed with defensive installations that made their previous lunar fortress look like a toy. What are your terms? He asked quietly. Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. Immediate withdrawal from all disputed systems. Recognition of human sovereignty over our established territory. A non-aggression pact lasting 50 standard years. And reparations for the damage caused by your unprovoked attack on our homeworld. And if we refuse, then we demonstrate why the survivors of Admiral Kethvar's fleet call this system the graveyard of empires. Admiral Thexani closed his eyes and made the hardest decision of his military career. I accept your terms. The surrender of the Confederation's greatest fleet, without firing a shot, would become one of the most studied events in galactic military history. But for the humans, it was simply the conclusion of a plan that had been years in the making. They had never intended to fight a defensive war. From the moment the first Confederation attack was detected, they had been preparing to end the conflict so decisively that no one would ever consider attacking humanity again. Number: the invasion fleet. Numbered 9,900. Strong. Earth made sure almost none escaped. 6 months after the surrender at Sol, Ambassador Sarah Martinez stood before the Galactic Confederation Council in the crystal halls of Zerion Prime. She was the first human to address the assembled representatives of 14 alien species, and the weight of history pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. The aftermath of the war had sent shockwaves throughout known space. The Confederation, which had dominated galactic politics for over 3 centuries, found itself forced to negotiate with what they had previously dismissed as a primitive border species. The psychological impact was almost as devastating as the military defeat. Chancellor Mordak, her compound eyes reflecting the chamber's prismatic lights, called the session to order. Ambassador Martinez, you have requested this assembly to present humanity's terms for a permanent peace settlement. The Council will hear your proposal. Martinez activated the holographic projector at the center of the chamber, displaying a 3-dimensional map of local galactic space. Human-controlled systems appeared in blue, while Confederation territory showed in gold. But what caught everyone's attention was the vast network of red lines connecting human systems across impossible distances. Honored representatives, Martinez began. The war between our peoples began because of a fundamental misunderstanding. The Confederation viewed humanity as an expanding threat that needed to be contained. You saw our growth as aggressive expansionism that would eventually challenge your dominance. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. You were right. A ripple of shocked murmurs passed through the assembled delegates. The crystalline ambassador from the hegemony leaned forward. Are you admitting to hostile intentions against Confederation space? I'm admitting that your assessment of human nature was accurate, Martinez replied calmly. We are an expanding species. We do seek to control our own destiny. And yes, we will challenge anyone who tries to limit our growth. But you made one critical error in your calculations. The holographic display shifted, showing detailed schematics of human ships and installations. You assumed that our expansion would follow traditional patterns. You thought we would conquer systems, establish colonies, and gradually push outward from our borders like every other spacefaring civilization in galactic history. Chancellor Mordak's antennae twitched with interest. Are you saying this assumption was incorrect? Completely wrong. Martinez smiled, and there was something unsettling about the expression. We don't expand through conquest. We expand through innovation. While you were building bigger fleets and stronger weapons, we were solving the fundamental problems that limit all galactic civilizations. The display now showed the true scope of human achievement. The modular ship technology that had baffled Confederation military analysts was just the beginning. Humans had developed matter transmission technology that could instantly transport materials across galactic distances. They had created artificial intelligence systems that could coordinate activities across thousands of star systems simultaneously. Most remarkably, they had solved the energy crisis that limited all advanced civilizations by learning to artificially enhance stellar fusion processes. "We don't need to conquer your worlds," Martinez explained. "We can build better ones. We don't need to control trade routes when we can transmit goods instantly across any distance. We don't need to fight for resources when we can create them from raw stellar energy." The implications were staggering. Traditional galactic economics assumed scarcity, competition for limited resources, and the need for territorial control to ensure security. Human technology had made all of these assumptions obsolete. Ambassador Kryloth of the hegemony was the first to grasp the full meaning. "You're saying that humanity has achieved post-scarcity civilization?" "We're saying that scarcity is a choice," Martinez corrected. "There's enough energy in this galaxy to support quadrillions of beings at levels of comfort that exceed anything currently enjoyed by your most privileged citizens. The only thing preventing this is the political and economic systems that assume competition and conflict are inevitable." The chamber fell silent as the delegates absorbed this information. What Martinez was describing wasn't just advanced technology. It was a fundamental reorganization of how civilizations could function. Chancellor Mordak finally spoke. "What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador?" Martinez gestured, and the holographic display changed to show a new map. Human space had expanded dramatically. But instead of conquered Confederation worlds, it showed new star systems where none had existed before. "We're proposing to build new worlds instead of taking old ones," she said. "Our stellar engineering technology can accelerate the formation of planetary systems, turning dead stars into thriving centers of civilization. Instead of fighting over existing resources, we can create new ones." "And in return?" prompted Admiral Thexani, who attended as the Confederation's military representative. "In return, we want an end to the cycle of conflict that has defined galactic politics for millennia." Martinez's expression became serious. The Confederation has spent centuries fighting wars of conquest and expansion. How many civilizations have been destroyed? How many worlds rendered uninhabitable? How much energy and creativity has been wasted on military endeavors that ultimately benefit no one? She activated a new display, showing casualty figures from 3 centuries of Confederation expansion. The numbers were sobering. Billions of beings killed, dozens of species rendered extinct, hundreds of worlds stripped of resources to fuel endless military campaigns. "We're offering an alternative," Martinez continued. "Partnership instead of conquest. Innovation instead of exploitation. Growth through creation, rather than destruction." The Veltarian representative, his silver scales shimmering with agitation, raised an objection. "These technologies you describe, they would fundamentally alter the balance of power throughout the galaxy. How can we trust that humanity won't use them to dominate other species?" Martinez had expected this question. "Because domination is inefficient. It's a waste of resources and creativity. Why would we want to rule over other species when we can work with them to build something better?" She activated one final holographic display, showing projections for galactic development under the proposed partnership, star systems that could support trillions of beings, energy production that could power civilizations for millions of years, technological advancement that could solve problems that had plagued galactic society since its inception. "This is what we're offering," she said. "Not conquest, but cooperation. Not expansion through force, but growth through innovation. A future where every species can reach its full potential without trampling on others." The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Representatives argued about trust, about security, about the fundamental changes to galactic society that human technology would bring. But underlying all the discussion was a simple reality. The old way of doing things had led to a war that the Confederation couldn't win. Chancellor Mordak finally called for a vote on the human proposal. The result was closer than Martinez had hoped, but decisive enough to matter. 9 species voted in favor, 4 against, with 1 abstention. The signing ceremony took place in orbit around Xerion Prime, aboard a specially constructed station that incorporated both human and Confederation design principles. As representatives from across the galaxy watched, Chancellor Mordak and Ambassador Martinez signed the Treaty of Xerion, officially ending the war and establishing the framework for galactic cooperation. But for Admiral Chen, watching the ceremony from the command center of the space station that had once been Earth, the real victory wasn't the treaty itself. It was what the treaty represented. "Status report," she said to her aide, a young officer who had been born in one of the artificial habitats that now housed most of humanity. "All systems nominal, Admiral. The Sol engineering projects are ahead of schedule, and we're ready to begin the next phase of stellar development. The Centauri system should be ready for colonization within 18 months. Chen nodded, then activated a display showing the galaxy-wide network of human installations. In the months since the war's end, humanity had been busy. New star systems were under development. Existing worlds were being upgraded with technologies that would support vastly larger populations. The infrastructure for a true galactic civilization was taking shape. "And the other species?" she asked. "The Veltarians have requested assistance with their energy crisis. The Zorthak want to discuss stellar engineering for their outer colonies. Even the hegemony has made unofficial inquiries about matter transmission technology." Chen smiled. The war had ended not with humanity's destruction or domination, but with the dawn of something unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization built on cooperation rather than conquest. The Confederation had numbered their invasion fleet at 9,900 strong. Confident that overwhelming force would solve their human problem once and for all. They had been wrong about the force part, but they had been right about solving the problem. Humanity had indeed been a threat to the old galactic order. But instead of destroying that threat, the Confederation had inadvertently catalyzed its transformation into something even more dangerous to their way of life. An example of what was possible when intelligent species chose cooperation over conflict. The survivors of Admiral Kethvar's fleet would return home with stories of humanity's military might, but they would also return with reports of human habitats that could support billions of beings in comfort, of technologies that could solve resource scarcity, and of a species that had chosen to build rather than destroy. The invasion fleet had numbered 9,900 strong, and Earth had indeed made sure almost none escaped. But those who did escape carried with them the seeds of galactic transformation, spreading word of humanity's achievements throughout Confederation space. Within a decade, the old order based on competition and conflict would crumble as species after species adopted human technologies and philosophies. The galaxy would be transformed, not through conquest, but through the far more powerful force of example. Humanity had won the war not by destroying their enemies, but by making them irrelevant. And in the growing network of artificial worlds and enhanced star systems, in the countless beings who now lived without fear of scarcity or war, in the children of dozens of species who grew up believing that cooperation was normal and conflict was an aberration of the past, Admiral Chen saw the true victory. The invasion fleet had come to destroy humanity's future. Instead, they had helped humanity create a future worth living in for everyone.